April the 3rd, 2024. Everybody, welcome back. I'm Dana Durnford. I'm also known as the nuclearproctologist.org. And you can call in at 709-589-4406. Hope you're having a great day. So did Taiwan dodge a nuclear bullet? That's the big question. Could their country have been destroyed if their nuclear power plants had collapsed and melted down? And as everybody already knows, but of course, it could have been destroyed. Would have been destroyed. It's more like it. And so, how many more opportunities will they get before they screw up? Why would you have nuclear in your country when it just takes one nuclear meltdown to destroy your country? What's the point? We'll talk about the earthquake in Taiwan for a few minutes. We'll go back and cover the nuclear news. So we get different earthquakes. They had a lot of, let me see here. They had a lot of earthquakes in the first little bit. This was person in Taiwan, and this was just in the first short while. Look at all the major earthquakes they were having. It's just and the population that's there is not used to it. It's been 25 years since they had a significant earthquake, and so nobody knows what to do. They don't have the fresh memory. So they dodged a nuclear catastrophe 25 years ago, and they just dodged one this time. Now, we really don't know 100% if there was damage to nuclear facilities or nuclear storage sites. We really don't know if there was releases into the ocean of liquid nuclear, because Taiwan has a very unusual history. Taiwan had took the natives and isolated them on an island known as Orchard Island a few decades back. They were looking for a nuclear dump, so they went out to Orchard Island and negotiated with the natives and asked them, could they put a salmon, tuna, and crab canning factory on Orchard Island, and that everybody in the community would get a stipend, a envelope of money every month. You didn't have to do nothing. And the natives were, yeah, well, sure, why wouldn't we? And so then, instead of building a canning factory for tuna and crab and stuff, they built a nuclear dump. When the natives finally figured it out a number of years later, they said, hey, too late, you signed the paper. We're good for 99 years. And so ever since then, they've been fighting to regain their island. But their island is now contaminated because it has a nuclear dump on it. There's always hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. And Taiwan just came a few steps away from the whole country being buried in radioactive fallout. The shaking, the damage was widespread over the whole country. And it really brings to the forefront how vulnerable their nuclear industry actually is. And of course, Taiwan has a despicable, revolting nuclear industry. They actually held the country hostage for, the nuclear industry did, for a number of years in 2017, 2018, when they were having a referendum on whether to import food from a nuclear wasteland at Fukushima Prefecture. And it was really something. It ended up going on the national ballot. And it was led by the nuclear industry, by the pro-nuclear community. And one of them was the nuclear mythbusters. And they were intent on poisoning the population. And they got voted down not to import the food. So 2 years later, that referendum ran out, which is so stupid. It's unbelievably stupid that it could run out in 2 years. And so now, instead of having another referendum about importing food from a nuclear wasteland, they they did no such thing. The Prime Minister shook hands with the Prime Minister of Japan, and then they proceeded to poison the population forever after. Now you see an explosion of diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries and illnesses. And these happen so quick, it's so deceitful, it's hard for the average person to even comprehend it. And then the population in Taiwan is... They did put up a pretty good fight. I mean, they did vote no. But then they were quickly betrayed 2 years later by the nuclear industry with no vote at all. And you can't help but thinking, if this was a nuclear reactor, what would the outcome be? And because, make no mistake, Taiwan is right on a fault line. And there was talk that they created a 30-meter, 100-foot tsunami on local islands. Whether there's truth to that, I don't know. But that was the media. The actual mainstream media was reporting that last night, early this morning. And so my big concern last night when the show was over was there damage to any of the nuclear facilities? Because they have nuclear facilities that are also closed down, but they have nuclear fuel in the pools, and that could easily have melted down and would be infinitely worse than a nuclear reactor melting down, because you're talking about decades of reactor cores. And so far, I don't know if there was damage, and we can't say whether there was or wasn't, so we're going to have to leave it at that, unfortunately. The industry is not going to come out and invoke anything about their nuclear facilities because they don't want to cause fear and pushback. But the damage is, oh my goodness. Last night we were doing a show on nuclear when this was happening, and we got a message telling us to check into it. And so we covered the majority of the pictures were widespread immediately, and we covered those last night. I'm just going to do a precursor of some of those pictures, but I'm not going to concentrate on Taiwan tonight. We'll cover it for the next 5-10 minutes or something. The pundits were out. The kooky pundits were out to distract you. But I can't imagine, because you had major earthquake after earthquake after earthquake. You had tsunamis. You had serious landslides across that country. So if they did have a nuclear accident, they couldn't have evacuated. And we're talking about, you'll see some pictures coming up in a little bit, incredible damage with landslides. Holy smokeroos. And because this ground can turn to liquefaction pretty quick, it could topple and disable the country's ability to fight a nuclear meltdown. And then once it gets out of control, all you can do is run away, right? Taiwan citizens were the heroes. And there's so much damage, we still haven't got it. And as everybody knows that hangs out at this site, it generally takes several weeks before you get the tally showing up. We know trains were literally thrown up in the air. We know transport trucks on highways were thrown up in the air. We know there was power outages. There was the entire recipe for a nuclear disaster. And just because a nuclear power plant is shut down doesn't mean it can't melt down. In fact, it stands a better chance of melting down because the fuel pools are very vulnerable and there's much more inventory, so it produces more heat. And if you don't keep water to it, it'll melt down within minutes. Yeah, and so widespread damage. I'm sure the majority of you would have seen most of this stuff by now. And I'm not going to seaweed is ready in Fukushima Prefecture City. In a nuclear wasteland, surrounded by 30 million one-ton bags of radiation in abandoned communities because of radioactive fallout. They're growing food. It wouldn't take you very long to notice something similar to what you're looking at right there. This is Fukushima Prefecture, right alongside the nuclear power plant where they have, no one can live, but farmers go in there harvesting food right alongside of millions of one-ton bags of radiation. And these ponds that they're growing seaweed in, they're going to be incredibly radioactive. Japan said this morning that last night, the first waves of the tsunami believed to have struck 2 of its southern islands. But we haven't got any detail except for one report. This is allegedly a video of tsunami damage that I couldn't get to work. And the mainstream media was saying there was a 90 or 100 foot, 30 meter tsunami that struck islands not very far away. And so one of them could have easily been Orchard Island, but we don't know because we can't find any other reports. These landslides, though, holy smokes. Buildings collapsing, landslides. And of course, the mainstream media, you can see that bus, you can see the car, that car in front and the bus were literally 2 wheels at a time were coming off the road. You see rock slides, rocks falling down. Actually hit that car at that time. That's all it takes to take out a nuclear power plant, by the way. And even more rocks. Buddy was very smart to move out of there. The landslides were really something when I was through this. They were very, very far. I'd be really interested over the next few days to see an aerial view of these mountains. I'm pretty sure all sides of the mountains would have lost their payloads. And look at this stuff. How are you going to evacuate when you got endless amounts of that? And these landslides, look, it's going to be so difficult to clean up because as you dig it out, it's going to have more landslides. Look at this thing here. How are you going to evacuate if your highway does that from a nuclear power plant in Taiwan? Or how are you going to get rescue in, right? Until it's incredible damage. And we won't really get the whole picture for quite a few days. These buildings are, you can see the way. Guess who that is? That's Rupert Winfield Hayes. He lives in Taipei. That's the BBC, who pretended he was in Reactor 4 and Reactor 3 at fuel pools. Rupert Winfield Hayes. So let me bring up a picture of Reactor 3 and 4. So that's Reactor 3 and that's Reactor 4. Well, what's left of it. They melted down. Rupert Winfield Hayes pretended that the buildings were perfect shape with the BBC. Surreal, isn't it? And here he is in Taipei. And so when you see someone like that talking about the earthquake, you have to wonder, are they covering it up? Because they done that. Rupert Winfield Hayes has already covered up multiple nuclear meltdowns. Is that why they rolled him out? Was there a nuclear event? And is that why Rupert Winfield Hayes is actually there? And so Rupert Winfield Hayes is up there in the top corner. I'm going to play that video for you. So you can hear him telling people that he's in the fuel pool 120 feet above the stump of Reactor 4 in the thin air where there's no nuclear, no nothing, pretending he's in the fuel pool. That's Rupert Winfield Hayes, this guy here. Now, he done the same thing at Reactor 3. So let's play that little clip. I'll get my big shiny head out of the way.
Where I was standing is on top of what used to be
That's
reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest X-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this reactor.
So that was Rupert Winfield Hayes was the first person. Yeah, so it was incredible damage. Then I found a bigger version of that rock fall. Let me bring that up on the full screen. I'll go backwards for you. It actually hits that car. You can't see it in the pictures. Hit the back of the car. It didn't. I don't think it killed the people. I don't know, but it looks like it didn't kill them. It looks like it just hit the back of the car and shifted the car. This is where Buddy. Look at this rock chasing him down the road. You know, that would have split your car open. And these landslides, that's right in the community. So there's no evacuating out of there if you had had a nuclear meltdown. I know Peaceware was asking last night about my diet, because I've mentioned it a few times over the last week, right? And so I changed my diet to vegetarian a few weeks ago. And I eat a lot of green leafy vegetables. Just a little interlude for everybody before we jump back on. So I'm eating a lot of salads, 3 times a day basically. And I'm steaming my vegetables instead of using butter or oil or anything like that. And so steaming your vegetables is another way of really... You don't need to cook most vegetables very much, by the way, but raw is better. I mean, but a lot of my diet is green leafy vegetables, and so I'm using croutons, dried up bread on top of it, and then I'm using a lot of wheat toppers on top of that, and cheese, of course, right? And I'm also using a chlorine dioxide, 5 drops of chlorine dioxide, 5 drops of the activator. And the activator is just the acid in your stomach, basically, mimicking that. And so you can literally do it without the activator, but I do it with the activator. And I do that 4 glasses a day. You can buy that on Amazon for around $40 Canadian. There's 2 bottles. And the chlorine dioxide is stuff you use for sterilizing your water. If you're a camper or a hiker and you're in the woods and you run out of water or you're lost, and you would normally have some tablets or liquid on you to sterilize water with. So that's the kind of chlorine dioxide we're talking about. And I use it to kill parasites in my body and to change the pH of my body, and so does green leafy vegetables. So I hope that answers your question. So let's go back to Fukushima and look at the headlines and think about Taiwan. This could be Taiwan, right? Headlines instead of Fukushima. After Fukushima, as the public possibly worldwide sickens over time, the truth will come out about Fukushima. So when they talk about the public worldwide, which is every human, whether you're working for the scumbag government or not, if everybody worldwide gets sick, then how sick is the population of Japan? Well, just to give you a kind of insight into that, let's think about this tweet from the Cancer Center, National Cancer Center of Japan. So the number of patients a year after Fukushima rose by an extra 865,000 cancers in the first year. 865,000 cancers in the first year. So cancer, by the way, is not the only illness or disease you're going to get from radiation. There's heart and liver and lung and respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome. And autism and Down syndrome are the first studies they'll do when there's a nuclear meltdown or there's releases or an accident or into the environment. That's the first thing they're going to be looking at, because it's going to show up in the newborns right away. And so radiation it gets in your body and it detonates every second in every direction. It's what we call a pulse of energy, a Becquerel, and it's usually described as a BQ, and that's the acronym for a Becquerel, and that's the pulse of energy every second, almost at the speed of light. So what else creates a pulse of energy? Does carbon create a pulse of energy almost at the speed of light every second? No. Does anything else on the planet create it? No. Just anthropogenic man-made radionuclides are pulsing this energy at the speed of light every second. And we're acclimated to the natural stuff. We have no defenses, no immune triggers for man-made. So the explosions are like explosions going off in your cells and your DNA and your chromosomes, and it wrecks them. It splits them, it tears them apart, and it does it every second. So your body has to repair every one of them, but it can't every second, and it has to attack the source every second. So all of a sudden your body is being saturated with white blood cells, and that's going to be that way for the rest of your life. And for every white blood cell you create, you're displacing the red blood cell, and the red blood cell is carrying oxygen nutrition. So as you bioaccumulate more radiation into your body, you start having all these health problems. You have less energy, you're more lethargic, and you keep bioaccumulating it. And if you're in Japan, Fukushima is the most serious man-made disaster in human history. The obesity rates nearly doubled Japan's average. And excessive weight gain after a nuclear crisis is a marker of radiation brain damage. And you'll notice there's a lot of people, because Canada and the United States got a horrific amount of radioactive fallout. Fukushima 311 tapes is trying to make a geezer suicide squad. So think about that connotation where they talk about the elderly as geezers. They dehumanize them. The people that built the country gave them a country to prosper in, and now they want to just throw them on the fires of hell. Map shows Fukushima fallout in the United States. Radiation doses in the Northeast and Great Lakes, 7,500 miles away, equal to the West Coast, which was brutal radioactive fallout. Massive radioactive releases at Fukushima going on for almost 3 years. And the visible steam is just the tip of the iceberg. The visible steam was coming out of the ground. Think about this statement here: doomsday-like release if Fukushima, if the fire in the pool at Unit 4 Fukushima, it would be a global catastrophe. Well, Reactor 4 is to your left. Everybody knew there was a fire on day 5. So by day 5, it was clear there was a fire. It was very clear. Every academic, including everybody in Taiwan, and Taiwan, you know, when Fukushima happened, the nuclear mythbusters, who stole their name off the popular TV show Mythbusters because they're so unoriginal, yet they're supposed to be nuclear geniuses, right? But they're not. They're just your typical bookworm scumbag from the nuclear industry. They had several thousand current students in the universities for nuclear. The alumni, the past students, and the nuclear industry that works at the nuclear power plant, spamming the internet after Fukushima, telling people it was like a banana and a potato chip and walking in the sunshine and climbing a mountain and flying on a plane. All of these are lies. That's how they manipulated into destroying your future and the future of the 8 million species with those exact lies. They have made everybody complacent. And so there's a big movement out there to ban nuclear weapons, but no one's going to use nuclear weapons, so they don't care about them people. You need to ban nuclear power. Too sweet, too. Top government official: Fukushima nuclear report was so shocking, they decided to treat it as if it didn't exist, like an ostrich. They stuck their head down in the ground and pretended it didn't happen. Imagine, we decided to treat it as if it didn't exist, and that's exactly what they'd done. And all the media worldwide participated, and I played that video for you earlier where they're all pretending they're in a building that don't exist. They had apologists and scumbags like Arnie Gunnarsson, Helen Calicut, who made, Arnie Gunnarsson made the racks for the fuel assemblies in the fuel pools, and yet he pretended that that was still intact.
And Unit 4 has always been my biggest concern. If you watched our website, on the very first week of the accident, I was saying that if Unit 4 were to catch fire, you'd have to evacuate Tokyo.
Well, Unit 4 is to your right. Does that look like a fire to anybody? Does that look like it might have caught fire? What a scumbag to do that, right? All of eastern Japan evacuated. The Fukushima plant was abandoned. Well, Fukushima, eastern Japan, western Japan, southern Japan, northern Japan should have been evacuated. The food was banned in half the country, all the large prefectures. 14 prefectures for over a decade. And because they replaced the people in the countries that made the ban in 55 countries with pro-nuclear and lifted the ban, 14 countries still have a ban, and rightfully so, and should keep that ban for at least 3,000 years. They should have evacuated Japan. And we actually have the radioactive fallout numbers across the entire country, and every once in a while we'll do a video just on those numbers. The whole country is incredibly radioactive. And that's forever. It's never going to go away. And we know how bad it is, for starters, because you picked up 30 million one-ton bags just in Fukushima Prefecture, not counting other prefectures. So look at these buildings and think about what would it take to fix those buildings. Because you can't fix them. They're nuclear meltdowns, by the way. But the media was out there less than a month later, 3 weeks later, saying Fukushima reactor leaks were plugged with liquid glass, which is a mixture of sawdust and newspapers. So imagine coming out saying they fixed it with sawdust and newspaper when it looks like that and no longer even exists. So just imagine how messed up journalists actually are. Journalists are basically psychotic monsters that should be locked up for the rest of their lives to prevent them from doing stuff like that. Because you know they're going to do it on the drop of a hat. Fukushima Reactor 3 and Fukushima Reactor 4, these reactors, each of them, just the reactors, not counting the fuel pools that used to be at the top of the buildings that are gone also, but just the reactors are equal to 100 Chernobyls. This could be Taiwan. This could easily be Taiwan today. Radiation data from Seattle area survey may be withheld. This is 5,500 miles away from Japan, by the way. May be withheld by the Feds for national security purposes, because at that time, the United States had 100 nuclear reactors, and Americans would have demanded it be closed if they had known what happened. And so the American taxpayers paid for the helicopters, paid for the radiation equipment, paid for the radiation employees, paid to train the radiation employees, paid the radiation employees, and gave them all equipment, the authority to monitor in case there was ever an accident to alert the population. When it was finally an accident, what did they do? They refused to tell them. Like, if it's so corrupt, the industry has corrupted every facet of your universities. And I'm not kidding when I say every facet. It has corrupted all of your medias. It has corrupted all of your major government, monetary and your government authorities. It has corrupted them all in increments over 80 years to the point now where it's total corruption. And you can trace it back to this disgusting nuclear degenerate industry. Listen to Helen Calicut. Now, Helen Calicut was doing a radio interview. I put the two big pictures in the bottom. The original video is the square in the top center. Now, she's one of the biggest anti-nuclear activists worldwide with 14 anti-nuclear books, but she's not who she says she is. She really truly is a wolf in sheep's clothing. She's going to be asked, does Fukushima look like, number 4 look like to the right or to the left?
Let me ask you this. You've said that if the spent fuel pool in number 4 collapses, that you would evacuate your family from Boston. Do you think we would ever know the truth of what's going on there? And the reason I ask is because we've seen coverage in the national news media here in the United States from ABC News and others that take video cameras in, saying that they're being given exclusive access to number 4 in the removal of the fuel rods, which is said to have begun. And what we see in the video being shared here in America is a pristine interior building. It doesn't look like a building in which the top blew off in a hydrogen explosion.
The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings, removed the debris from the top of Building 4, and it does look pristine.
But they don't. Nobody, just because they're tidy people, don't mean you can go to a nuclear meltdown. You're disgusting witch. You're a revolting parasite. Dr. Helen Caldicott, mass murderer. Radiation data from Seattle area survey withheld by the feds. This is Arnie Gunnarsson. Arnie Gunnarsson is going to tell you that they went in the reactor 4, which is this building here that doesn't even exist, and they put enormous amounts of support under Fukushima Reactor 4 fuel pool. But you can't go into a nuclear meltdown.
The Unit 4 was damaged twice. It was damaged by all of the earthquakes that occurred, and it was also damaged by a series of explosions over the first week or two of the accident. So the building is structurally weakened. Now, Tokyo Electric's acknowledged that. They went in May and June of last year. This is more than a year ago, and put an enormous number of extra structural supports directly under the fuel pool to keep the bottom of the pool from breaking through.
Okay, now here's Arnie. He knows where the fuel pool to because he used to make the assemblies for him.
The division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima. And
so he used to make the assemblies for the racks for the assemblies exactly like Fukushima for 70 nuclear power plants. So he knows it's not gone. He knows it's gone, rather. So why was he out there pretending and still doing it today with fair winds? What a despicable piece of shit him and scumbag cock Helen Caldicott actually are. High radiation levels around the plant prevented the helicopter, but they're inside putting enormous amount of support under the fuel pool. Really? The building doesn't even exist.
Good evening, this is NHK's Newswatch 9 for Friday, May 20th. On the 7th day after the March 11th quake, self-defense forces sprayed water on the...
All the helicopter's pilots died in Chernobyl, all 600 of them. And this is a heat signature of the 4 reactors. The only one with a little bit of fuel left in it was reactor 2, but eventually that went China syndrome. They're turning the ground into quicksand at the Fukushima plant. Engineers warns that the reactor units may topple. And this could be Taiwan. Taiwan could have toppled. Right? Because you have all this weight at the top of the buildings and the fuel pools for starters. They were worried about that at Fukushima with all the water they were pumping into the site, they said. The tanks in Fukushima were actually empty. They were built to manipulate you. The buildings were actually gone right away. Number 4 reactor, a top national security issue for the entire world. Number 4 is a top security issue for the entire world. And so all the media come out and said that they were in the fuel pool getting their fuel out of the pools that don't exist. And the importance of this is astronomical. The significance of this is there's nothing more important. This could be Taiwan will do the same thing, I bet you. If we do nothing, even Tokyo could become off limits. Think about that headline. If we do nothing, even Taipei could become off limits. If you don't stop nuclear in Taiwan and you have another major earthquake close to any of these plants, we may not be able to live in Taiwan someday. That'll be the next headlines. They're talking about not being able to live in Japan someday, which is true. They shouldn't live in Japan right now. The radiation release is blanketed North America, not just Japan. North America should be evacuated too. Canada and United States. They should have evacuated Britain, Great Britain, United Kingdom, Scotland, Ireland in 1979 or 1986 after Chernobyl. Chernobyl, they closed 9,400 farms in Ireland, Scotland, and the United Kingdom. They closed the freshwater fishery for 30 years in Sweden after Chernobyl. But see, when you close 9,400 farms in your country, you're admitting that all your fresh water is contaminated. You're admitting all your communities are completely contaminated. You're admitting all your stocks. You're admitting all of Europe. In order to do that much damage to the United Kingdom, you had to contaminate all of Europe first. And they actually done sex ratio studies on Europe to tie that together. And guess what? Japan Times column, as the public possibly worldwide sickens over time. As the public worldwide is how they should say it. As not the public, but as the humans worldwide and all. So if you make everybody worldwide sick, or you contaminate the planet, you contaminated the 8 million species. You contaminated all the fresh water. You contaminated the entire ocean. And how many of us can live without fresh water? Well, that's right, none of us can. What is the most important asset as humans do we have, as Earth do we have, is our water. How many species can live without water? None. And we have contaminated all of it because it is stupid, this stupid, self-centered, maniacal, sadistic industry known as nuclear. It's a disgusting industry. And because we've covered it for so long, the people in the industry, as you start to get to know them, you start to realize no matter what they touch, it turns to dust. Their entire legacy is predicated upon nothing but deception, deceit, dishonesty, and lies and manipulations. Oh, there we go. We finally made it to 18 votes. We got 30 votes on our poll. We got 18 likes, rather. No matter what I do, the numbers are digitally set for my site and for my videos. I could have 100,000 people on my site and it'll say 30 people are watching. The industry is so scared, so terrified, so mortified of the truth that any dissent at all is considered a threat of national security to almost all the United Nations countries for sure. It's a coward industry. The whole industry, everybody in it, all the universities, these are incredible cowards. Tokyo press conference, deliberate cover-up of the public's exposure to Fukushima radiation and health problems they are suffering. This is now Japan's biggest problem, continual, purposeful concealment of facts. The media not only will not probably report what's going on, they'll cut your throat with lies. Leaked email showed the British government worked with the nuclear companies like Areva, like TEPCO, like all the big major players worldwide for a public relation campaign to downplay Fukushima. and that the degrees of the collusion were truly shocking. So when you think about what the International Atomic Energy Agency, that's Rafael Grossi there, when you think about what the International Atomic Energy recently done, where they said Fukushima had no meltdown, and that there was no releases, and that everything is in the tanks. But yet when you look at the buildings, it's clear nothing is in the tanks. They picked up 30 million one-ton bags. There's 865,000 cancers in the first year. There's 14.2% of newborns per 100,000 need open heart surgery. There's 14,200 neonates and infants need open heart surgery for every 100,000. These are absurd numbers. There's 13,646 thyroid tumors out of 38,000 children, and 2 centimeters or bigger, and the thyroid for a child is only 2 centimeters by 3 centimeters. For an adult, it's 3 by 5 centimeters, which means they're producing nothing but radioactive hormones. Not only that, in order for that to transpire and become, they would have been saturated with all the other isotopes, the gamma, the alphas, the neutrons, the betas. And not only that, then that would have meant you would have infiltrated their skeleton, and so their skeleton would be producing radioactive stem cells. And Taiwan just dodged a nuclear bullet if they're lucky. There could be a meltdown, but they're not going to admit it. That'll be the end of the nuclear industry. Fukushima wastewater from ruined nuclear plants be released. Like nuclear power generation, the only invention that may destroy the future of humans. Miku Kaku's human civilization may destroy itself. I mean, look at Fukushima. Liquefaction of 3 nuclear reactor cores. And I know people want me to go out and do all kinds of interviews. Do you know how many people are going to tell you the stuff I'm telling you? There's nobody out there. There was for the first couple of years, a few of them showing up. There's nobody out there. Nobody going to come out and rally in the industry against the industry. Nobody's going to come out and tell you the factual truths. They'll come out and tell you little tidbits because they're trying to sell something, a book or something. But they're not going to tell you the details. Major U.S. paper, time to quit nuclear power altogether. It threatens the very existence of civilization. And for Taiwan, should take all of this to heart and dig deep into their souls, because if you have a nuclear accident, you have no future for your loved ones, for your family, for your friends, for your communities, and for your children, which is the future of your country. They're setting you up for a no way back. Nuclear power generation, the only invention that may destroy the future of human beings. And because your radiation is not going to be stuck just in your country, it's going to circulate the entire planet. The entire planet. This is France's model of 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137 shortly after Fukushima. This is backed up by a study, apparently. 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air worldwide. That model is only based on the 26th of March, which is 14 days or 15 days after Fukushima. The whole planet is covered in radioactive fallout. So if that was Taiwan, all of Taiwan would be buried by 24 hours in radioactive fallout, the entire country. And there is no way back from that. There is no way back. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Yeah, if you give me 2 thumbs up, then one, it'll take your thumb away. The next one is you're taking the thumb up away. It'll register for a moment, but then it'll disappear typically. So this is 8 days of radioactive fallout from Fukushima. 8 days and almost the entire planet is covered at 1 million to 10 million atoms. Cesium-137. Cesium-137 pulses gamma at 600 feet every second. That will destroy chromosomes and DNA. So if there's any nesting birds within 600 feet, they're going to be brutalized, and the eggs probably won't survive. If there's ants nest there, if there's bees nest there, and so we're only talking one atom. It's so hard to comprehend, see? Because you can put 200 million atoms in the head of a needle, but you can't see it. And so just one of them is going to pulse energy 600 feet every second. It's an insidious, monstrous, odious industry, no matter how you look at it. Radioactive nuclear waste burial ground in Pittsburgh area to be cleaned up by the federal government. And they have so many of these sites that have been they created and abandoned. These are, how many times have we covered these stories over the years? It's absurd. An untold number, how come it's an untold number? Of 55-gallon drums, how can it be an untold number? Of radioactive waste, what do you mean? Like, they're not burying radioactive waste, they're burying nuclear waste. In the shallow trenches, on a 144 acres site in Armstrong County that pose a health and safety risk to those who live nearby and far away because it leaches into the water tables. If you put any kind of metal in the ground for a couple of years, when you come back, it's going to be incredibly rusted. If you put 45-gallon drums in a shallow trench for 50 or 60 years, when you come back, it's going to be all hemorrhaged out. Every time it rains and snows, it pushes it into the water tables and into the communities. They pose a health and safety danger to those who live nearby, but now the decades of lawsuits and public outcry, the federal government is getting ready to finally clean it up, long after most of us dispersed. This lady, she's 71 years old, been there her whole life. She said, I don't want to move. But lady, you're in a nuclear wasteland. If you want to have the year 72, 73, 74, you really should consider moving out of a nuclear wasteland. Count your lucky stars, you still have a life, right? It's absurd. She got breast cancer and everything else, and a lot of her people in the community got cancers. But if you only count cancer, then you're missing 99% of the picture. Because cancer is just one of the illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries that is going to manifest. It's not going to be just cancer. In the 1950s and 60s, the companies Mumek and nearby Apollo produced nuclear fuel for power plants and nuclear submarines and buried the waste in Parks Township. And after decades of fighting for it, neighbors like Secreto have won another major victory. It's not a major victory. You're supposed to abandon that town. Like, people are so complacent because the nuclear industry tells them it's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in the sunshine, that they're not able to make a rational decision. They think it's simply as digging it up and that's going to make a difference, but it's not. Your community, once it's radiated, it's always radiated. And you can clean that up, that site perfect, not that you can, but let's just say you could. You can clean the site up perfectly. Your community, your trees, your flower, your water, your water pipes, everything, your gardens, your buildings, your sidewalks, everything is irradiated from fallout from these disease factories that they had there. They destroy things forever. It's not for 100 years or 200 years or 500 years. It's forever. That's the problem with radiation. An estimated 30,000 cubic yards of contaminated waste. Well, how many drums are in a cubic yard? How many 45-gallon drums are in a cubic yard, I wonder? We're talking about a lot. We're talking about incredible waste. If you're burying it there right away, then it's incredible waste. It's not like contaminated gloves and shoes and equipment. This is pure waste that's gone through a chain reaction and still splitting atoms. They will unearth a little bit at a time, scan it with x-rays and radiation detectors before encapsulating it in steel containers. First off, if you dig out a little bit, unearth a little bit, and there's a bunch of radiation there, You can't go in there and scan jack shit. You got to run away. You don't go back either. You're not going to be x-raying none of that. None of it's going to be in containment. You're not going to dig up 45-gallon drums of nuclear waste, which are going to be pounding radiation. Like, just say that the 45-gallon drums were intact. You're not going to x-ray that. The fuck are you talking about? You're not going near it. No one stood there and dumped it. It's not like they stood there and dumped nuclear fucking waste into the 45-gallon drum and put a fucking lid on it. This is incredibly radioactive stuff we're talking about. I just despise media. All media should be just forced to go into Fukushima so we can get rid of them. Federal Appeals Court kills Holtec license for temporary nuclear waste storage in New Mexico. Chris Singh, you piece of shit. Why are the Americans letting Chris Singh, a Pakistani, fuck up their country like that, I wonder? He's destroying your whole fucking country now. Why are people sitting there and taking it? Why are you letting some foreign invader come in your country and destroy your ecosystem, your fresh water? Where's all the patriots in your country? Where's all the militias? You don't go deal with a fucking piece of shit like that. U.S. nuclear costs and projections continue to rise. Nuclear costs in America or Canada or China or anywhere else is just skyrocketing every couple of weeks. The Biden administration got $850 billion defense budget. $850 billion. If you got rid of the military, you took that money, that's enough for 200 large power plants bigger than a nuclear power plant of geothermal. Can you imagine how good your country would be if you didn't have that stupid, idiotic military machine? The idiot military moron that thinks everything is a fucking nail. Nuclear vote for Ignis residents in Canada. Oh my God. So what the nuclear industry, this is Nuclear Waste Management Organization here in Canada, which is the nuclear industry itself. The criminals themselves are in charge of the most toxic stuff in human history. The criminals are. And what they do is they can't put it in the ground because it's still splitting atoms. It's still creating noble gases too, right? And these gases are incredibly volatile, which is what happened at WIP, right? They were putting all this high-level nuclear waste when it was only supposed to be for very, very low level. They were putting high level down there, and the gases build up, and when you had a spark or fresh or oxygen introduced, it detonated. And it was the same thing with the Mayak, right? Back in the 50s. So, and we talk about this a lot over the last number of years, right? So the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, and they went and bought 1,500 acres of farmland. Because that's what nuclear does. Anything with nuclear waste, nuclear power plants has to be surrounded by farmlands. Let me bring it up here for you, maybe. Here's a story from a couple of years ago of the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. So the Nuclear Waste Management Organization bought 1,500 acres of farmland so they could have their deep geological repository. And so they only need 250 acres of the facility on the surface, which is 250 acres is a square kilometer. That's a pretty big facility, if you ask me. Because they're going to repackage all the high-level nuclear waste. And the only way they can ship this is if it's vented. You're shipping nuclear fuel that is being vented on your highways. Because you can't put it in a cask and then take it out of a cask. Because you got all these gases built up. As soon as you open it up, it's going to detonate. Because of the oxygen, right? And so you're going to ship the nuclear waste, what is it, 1,000 miles away. And then, usually these highways is all farmland on both sides. You're going to do that for, 100 years. When you get to where they're going, which is South Bruce, then they're going to repackage it at the surface in a square kilometer. But what about the other 1,000 acres, the other 1,250 acres, the other 5 square kilometers? Well, they want people to keep farming that. The remainder will be continued to use as it is today for farmland. But they don't even want to do that. And this is why they're doing... And so just listen to this story. In a few weeks, residents will vote on their willingness. And that's an important word, by the way. To have a nuclear waste repository in the area. Your willingness. Your voice, your choice. We're all ears. English willingness engagement team. Willingness engagement team. Like, have you ever heard anything so bizarre in your entire life? And the willingness engagement team, and what their job is to talk people in, telling people, we're going to put nuclear waste there, we're going to have all these protections and all this. But no matter how they paint up this monster, it's still going to be a monster to anybody who don't know nothing about nuclear. And so ultimately what they're trying to do is they want the locals to vote no, because they don't want a site. And this is why they're putting it in major farmland surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of square miles of prime farmland. And it's also a test run, because if they're stupid enough to do it, then it's even better in one way, because they'll pollute all the farms and poison all the people. This is what they do at all nuclear sites, all nuclear dump sites, and almost every single nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms as far as you can see, or just over the hill in every direction. Decision time is near. In a few weeks, residents of the northwestern Ontario Canadian town will cast their ballots on the willingness, again the word willingness, to have a nuclear waste repository, deep geological repository in the area. And then a consulting firm will write a report, a consulting firm. And so this is out of the hands of humans. Now it's gone to the money machine. And submitted to the English Township Council in June. Then the councillors will make their decision, transmit it to the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. The councillors will make their decision for everybody else for a million years and transmit it to nuclear waste management. This is the same council where the nuclear waste has thrown millions of dollars at them and who knows what under the table, because they got $28 billion in a bank account that's growing interest like you can't even imagine every day, and no intentions of ever having a deep geological repository. Because they want all the nuclear waste is splitting atoms into the environment. The nuclear industry is intentionally poisoning the biosphere permanently beyond recovery. The most important story in human history is nuclear waste, because it destroys the entire ecosystem in the biosphere, and you can't see it, smell it, hear it, feel it, touch it, pick it up, throw rocks at it, perceive it. You can't even, and the average person who knows nothing about nuclear has no hope at all in flushing out the story on their own, because they have the entire media, universities worldwide telling them it's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in sunshine and skipping fucking rocks on a pond. Excuse my Canadian. Or not. The Chelsea squad, like, did they look for the stupidest named company they can find to do a door-to-door knocking? Hi, we're with the Chelsea squad. 2 days before the nuclear exploration event with the mayor, Kim, Mayor Deep Pockets, give me all the money the nuclear industry got booting around, we'll vote whatever you like, has described as an educational event for our residents. Educational event. Without people like me, why didn't they fly me up there so I can have a few town hall meetings? And then we could just lynch everybody at the one time from the Nuclear Waste Management Organization and have a big barbecue after. We are so pleased we had over 40 exhibits who will be on the ground and providing factual and critical information about the nuclear industries, the safeties and transportation. Yeah, you're going to have all the public relation firms there to cut your throats, your loved ones' throats, and the future of your children, destroy the health of your children. That's what you're doing. This proposed deep geological repository and the opportunities that are associated with it. First off, they're not going to have one, or they wouldn't be doing this. They wouldn't be having a referendum. They would just go and do it. And they wouldn't need to do it in a community. Why not do it 500 miles north in the Great Shield in pure granite rock? Not that that's going to stop the neutrons. But because they've done a test in Canada a couple of years ago where they set up a neutron detector 150 miles away and 1.5 kilometers deep in the Canadian Shield in granite. And it still picked up the nuclear power plant's neutrons. So living within 100 miles of these things is so stupid. Not just because of radioactive fallout, because of that particular facet. But we don't stop there, she added. We have also invited those who are presenting the potential challenges of the project, which is the control opposition. I wouldn't be surprised to see Helen Callicott and Arnie Gunnarsson showing up, to tell you the truth. And their voices must also be heard. I think the most important voice, and I'm not blowing my own horn, would be someone like me, who's able to tell the actual story, who's able to show you the documentation. And then everybody there would become an anti-nuclear activist, right? Beginning at 12 o'clock a.m. on April 26, English residents and the property owners, 16 and older, will have their 5 days to vote their position on the deep geological repository. Wabigoon Lake Ojibwa Nations, which is one of the native big communities in Ontario, northwest of Inglis, and I really like they're vehemently against the nuclear industry, is undergoing their own willingness process. There's nothing more morbid than a freaking misdirection like that. And will report their decision to the Nuclear Waste Management Organization about the same time. That is the most bizarre, truly one of the most bizarre stories imaginable. The industry-funded nuclear organization says community willingness is a prerequisite for whatever place it chooses to locate the underground nuclear waste facility. So the community has to be willing. Otherwise, they're not going to do it. Oh, we'll spend another 5-10 years looking for another place. No rush. Everything is still splitting atoms into the ecosystem. You don't have a future, so there's no big rush. It's unbelievable evil industry. And you got... It comes into your community with $28 billion and starts throwing around hundreds of thousands here, a couple of million over there, another 100,000 here, 250,000 there, 500,000 here. It just throws it around because it's making so much interest every year on the $28 billion. And then you got this community divided, right? And so when you have the referendum, they're going to vote no. That's what they're counting on. You see, all countries doing it. Poison portal. U.S. and U.K. could send their nuclear waste to Australia under the nuclear submarine pact. Why the fuck is Australia getting nuclear submarines? I know Australia got stupider every year because of the British nuclear testing down there poisoned the whole country, and because they're former slaves to United Kingdom. But the Australian nuclear industry is like a whole different level of evil, isn't it? Like it's the nuclear industry, and we've covered it so much for so long. We've never seen a good story about nuclear anywhere, let alone in Australia. And Australia always has the most snarkiest, the most slick, despicable laws. Like, and they're, because it's illegal to have nuclear power in Australia. It's constitutionally illegal. Or the Bill of Rights or Magna Carta, whatever their doctrine is based upon. It's constitutional. Let's say it's constitutional. It's constitutionally illegal to have nuclear power in Australia because They made it illegal because it's so dangerous. They recognize the dangers. And I have no doubt that has something to do with 3 Mile Island, right? Because 3 Mile Island, this is why you have sirens at every nuclear power plant in North America today, is because of 3 Mile Island. They made a concession. They said, we'll hide the nuclear meltdown from the population. And they acknowledged that 2 million people got incredible radioactive doses. And then they said it was equal to watching color television for an extra year. Watching color television for an extra year. And then the major medias and the major universities came out and supported that assertion. That a nuclear meltdown was equal to watching color television for an extra year. Like, I don't care who it is that wrote that story. Even if they're 90 years old, I still like to kick the shit out of them. And I can't imagine kicking the shit out of somebody 90 years old unless they're in the nuclear industry and they fucked you and your loved ones over and destroyed millions of people, murdered millions of people with their lies. Well, it's despicable that, like, an old war criminal or an old mass murderer is still a mass murderer, okay? Labour describes the claims as fear-mongering. It says the government would not accept waste from other nations. But this is not the first time we've had this conversation, is it? Because, like, the British hates Australia. That's why they sent all the criminals, so-called criminals and people they didn't like, anybody that was opposed to the British monarchy. That's where they sent them, was the United Kingdom, or to Australia. But they managed to grow food and eke out a living and then prosper. So the British went down there now with the nuclear testing, decided to poison everybody there. British actually went to Australia. They waited for the winds to blow across Australia, and then they set off their nuclear weapons. And Montebello and Maralinga are still, for instance, still too radioactive 70 years later to go there. And Montebello is all these beautiful tropical paradise off the coastline. And they done the same thing, of course, the British did to the Christmas Island. Beautiful tropical paradise. They done the same thing with the Marshall Islands, with the Americans, for instance. Beautiful tropical paradise, went out and destroyed it with nuclear. There's still 1 million square kilometers too radioactive to be habitable today. They done the same thing. The French done the same thing with the French Polynesians. Beautiful tropical paradise. And the one thing these places all also have in common, with all that, they all done nuclear testing, destroyed the ecosystem permanently forever. But the babies are all born in these places are what they call jelly babies. They're not really babies, or they're incredibly congenital malformations. Now, everything the nuclear industry touches, it destroys. Bar nothing. There's nothing it doesn't touch that it doesn't destroy. It destroys everything. And it loves using precious metals. And all the precious metals used at nuclear can never be used anywhere else again, because it's radioactive with neutron bombardments. But see, there's a couple of loopholes in the legislation in Australia. Allows for the creation of facilities for managing, storing, and disposing of radioactive waste from the AUKUS submarines, and defines the AUKUS submarine as either Australian or a UK-US submarine, and includes such submarines as not complete, for example, because it's being constructed or disposed of. So, yeah, theoretically, they opened the door to allowing US and American nuclear waste to be put there. Because, like, first off, right, currently they got the 7th biggest weapons producer has set up shop in Australia. That's literally the end of Australia. They need all the money the country has each year to survive, and so that's what they're doing. They're corrupting all the politicians, all the government, universities, and the medias, and now they've already reached that. They've already plateaued at that, and so the next step now is to loot the country, and that's what the AUKUS submarines is doing. If you took the $370 billion for the submarines, which is so stupid, I can barely wrap my mind around it, and use it for geothermal, that's enough power to power the entire country 2 times in geothermal at current prices. And you can have it all running in about 4 or 5 years. No, let's give it all to the 7 biggest weapons producers. There was also, yesterday there was a M6.0 earthquake hit northeastern Japan. And look where it was too. It was on land. This was yesterday morning. And the 4s and 5s and 3s and you're looking at are in the Shindu scale, a scale of 1 to 7. So you have to multiply each one of them by 1.428. And so the Shindu scale is like 1 is in increments of halves. So 1, 1.52, 2.53, 3.54, 4.56, 6.57. That's it. So there's only 7 on the Shindu scale. So each one is multiplied by 1.428 to get the relevant. And Taiwan does the same thing to get the relevance. And which is interesting because with the Taiwan earthquake last night, basically 24 hours ago right now, we didn't get any reports. Did anybody see any reports of the Shindu scale? Everything was in the Richter scale. And this is what we see Japan doing. Japan will report on everything in a magnitude. And when you check later, the official story will be it really wasn't in a magnitude. It was actually in the Shindu scales. In the northeast prefecture of Iwate, which is not really, in terms of earthquake, very far from Fukushima, because the Fukushima buildings are so fragile, you have to be concerned. He said the focus was 71 kilometers deep, and it was a lower 5, so it would be a 5.5 times 1.428, because it's Shindu scale, right? And they're actually using that particular scale to manipulate it, which is a 7.9, 7.85, which is a 7.9, which is an 8 on the Richter scale. That's what a lower 5 translates to. And this was April the 2nd. Oh, yes. So I showed you that last night. I might as well show you again. I was using the knee pads today. Holy shit, man. My knees are so shot. This is what we picked up yesterday. So I was using the Geiger counter. I was using that today, twice. I'm very, very pleased with that. Because it has auto ranging with the multimeter. Makes life a lot simpler, trust me. So we picked up a rather expensive multimeter yesterday. I picked up the lights yesterday. And the last 6 or 7 times I went there to pick up equipment, I always pick up the lights, which for the trailer, and then I put some back, right? But I've been picking up the other parts along the way, and so now I finally picked up the lights. You'd be surprised how expensive all of this stuff gets. I got a great deal on lock nuts yesterday, grabbed them. Because because the equipment I got a big operation. I shouldn't use anything but lock nut washers, right? Nylon lock nuts, and that's my lock switch for my trailer to turn the brakes on if the trailer breaks away on me. And I hooked up the smart charger yesterday. Nasty weather is still. I got a great deal on that for $30, and so I got that permanently hooked up now to one of the batteries. Tomorrow I'm hoping to hook up the batteries in the boat is the plan. But I don't know, the weather's looking pretty rough. It looks like we're still got a winter. We had like a fall spring. But I'm still going to just keep, you know what I'm like. Once I start, I'm just going to keep marching ahead. And then knee pads. I was using them today. Holy smokes. That's the knee pads right there, the black ones right here. And they make some difference. They're nice and thick. I mean, they're still not the really nice ones. But I was using the cheap dollar store ones before, and they kind of work great. But they're shit straps. They got all kinds of issues. I was wearing them today for probably 4 hours. I was out working, and I came in the house and I sat down and I realized, geez, I still got my the knee pads still on. That's how comfortable they actually were. I went to get the gel pads because they were on sale, but of course they were all gone, right? And that wire cutter, I was using that yesterday. That's a really heavy duty wire, and every wire stripper I get, some wire cutter, and that's got a crimper on it too. Every one I get is always a cheap one, and then it breaks down after like 20 minutes or an hour's use. That one ain't going to be breaking down anytime soon. I got that good deal on that. Indeed, I did. So, like, consider what the nuclear industry has done to you. That here's all the world's medias, major media. This is ABC Australia, the biggest media in Australia. BBC, Rupert Winfield Hayes. BBC is the biggest media in the Great Britain, United Kingdom. CBS is the biggest media in the United States. And CNN is a global media propaganda machine, right? So you got the world's biggest medias pretending they're in a building that don't exist to protect the nuclear industry. You really think they won't do that again? I guarantee you they will, over and over and over. That's what their new future is, to always cover everything up. And we don't got no checks and balances out there. As far as I know, this is unfortunately the only show on the planet, in history really, that was anti-nuclear, but with a twist. Is I work 11 times harder than a typical person would, not that they exist, where I provide you all the documentation all the time. And the only way I can do that was I had to sacrifice for years and years and years and get the equipment that won't let us down, right? That will give us the appearance of a professional institution or professional media, something like that, so that you can get people's attention for a few minutes, and hopefully they will stay around long enough to digest the urgency of the story. But we're also we do marine research expeditions also. And so for 6 years, we traveled from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska, where there's 27,000 islands. And we done research, emergency species counts. And the species from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska are well known. Right? They're well known. And the species were exterminated because of Fukushima. And so we are here at war 5 days a week. This is not a game. We're not here because it's easy. We're not here because it's fun. We're not here for glory. We're here fighting for you till you wake up and come to your senses and join in the great fight that the world desperately needs millions of people to participate in. This industry time has expired, and if it doesn't, then your time expires. You're going to have to make a stand. Because the reality of it is, this is Earth's last stand. This is radioactive dispersal 20 days over there of Neptunium-239, which decays to plutonium-239. So the reactors were actually destroyed. The emissions covered the entire planet, and they exterminated the highly visible species, and then by proxy the other species. So in those tide pools, there was incredible diversity of shellfish. There was the clams, the typical clams, the little next to Manillas, the razorbacks. There was the gooey ducks, the oysters, the scallops, many different types of swimming scallops. There's many different types of scallops. There was the snails. There was the periwinkles. There was the mussels. There's incredible diversity. Then there was around 80 species of sea anemones, and each species came in multiple vibrant colors. There was incredible diversity of worms, around 480 species of worms. There was around 78 species, let me find a better picture, of starfish, and each species came in multiple vibrant colors. There was 600 algae. There was all these snails and periwinkles. It's very difficult for people to comprehend them if they're not familiar. There was 700 algae. The algae, 700 kelps. And in that 700 kelps was 5,500 invertebrates without the backbones, like little shrimp. all exterminated because of Fukushima. Perpetual radioactive fallout destroyed the entire ecosystem. Fukushima was not a game, and it was allowed to happen. It was built. They built the reactors in an earthquake zone with a 3,000-year history of mass, right by the tectonic plates, guaranteed to happen. They built these reactors with the fuel pools at the very top of the building, so there's no way to salvage anything, to stop it from melting down, rather, where there's a 3,000-year history of tsunamis. And so they knew at some point a tsunami was going to come in and take out some, if not all, of the nuclear power plants. They unequivocally knew that was going to happen. And they knew the fallout, because they'd been at this a long time, they knew the fallout was going to cover the entire planet. So when we went out, I went out and I'd done research expeditions for 6 years. The first year we seen an extinction event. The reason we went back for 5 more years is to see if the species recovered. And the species didn't recover. And everybody on this planet should hang their head in shame that this industry still exists. And so we are here to go to war for humanity and the 8 million species, because nobody else will. It's a very difficult, a very lonely, a very arduous, and we're still we're gearing up to do more research. We're going to get out there. Hopefully in the next few days we'll be back on the ocean if everything goes good. But it's hard to comprehend how little support I actually have. And so for the last couple of months, you see what I do with the money. I'm out buying the equipment to keep this operation functional for another number of years. And that's all I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to make sure that I have, and I've done pretty good, I think. I'm trying to make sure I got everything I need to fix this operation, because when things break down, that's when the operation falls apart. And I'm not healthy, and I shouldn't be doing the repairs myself. I'm simply not healthy enough to do it. But I made sure that I got all the equipment that I can do it. And then if I don't do it, then I know nobody else is going to do it. And so when I do it, there's us, right? There's around 30 of us, 40 of us that I know that are hardcore. And there's only a couple of people chipping in to fund this operation. So everything I get coming in, I got to make sure I get equipment that is going to keep this operation running forward. But just doing oil changes on all the equipment I got is nuts. Just buying filters for everything I got is nuts. Just keeping the maintenance on everything I got is just a full-time job. And then trying to do these shows 5 days a week on top of everything else. Because we got to tell that story as much as we can, right? We can't. I'll turn the volume down, probably too loud for everybody. Could Taiwan have destroyed their country if a nuclear power plant had collapsed and melted down? A couple of people accidentally voted no, but clearly the answer is yes. So we appreciate everybody who participated in the poll. Hugs for everybody. Bless you, everybody. Have a great night and a great day tomorrow. And I remind everybody, if everybody chip in $10, $20, $30 every month, I wouldn't have to struggle. And this operation is more important than all of us. We have to make this happen. I can't do it on my own. I'm doing everything I can. I'm going to do all the work. I don't mind any of that. I don't mind the sacrifices, and you know that I've been doing this for 20 years. But I can't do it without support, right? And so we're close. And close doesn't cut it when it comes to what we're doing. So we still got to keep pushing forward. I hope people are able to find the courage to support me. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. My heart goes out to all the victims in Taiwan. And I truly hope they don't have a catastrophe, but I fear they might be. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's the last show of the week. Thursday night. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Take care.